And hey everyone, my name's Thomas, aka MrWartburg, and welcome to if this ever comes out, or if we ever put it anywhere, a pilot episode of a new podcast I'm running with my co-host, Patrick, aka Mr. Fusion.
Hello, everybody. What's going on? Greetings and salutations.
Indeed, indeed. Now, as I'm Wartburg, he's Fusion, and we're going to be talking about entertainment, we decided to call it Wartburg and Fusion Entertainment Review, because review is technically a synonym for discussion, and WAFER is a way cooler acronym than WAFED.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just the way it is. So we don't even have like a logo or anything, like the top, like where I'm pointing on the screen. Totally blank right now. We're just figuring this shit out as we go. But yeah, as you can see here, we got some scenes to play with. I'm a big fan of this. I like how things look on this.
Nice.
With this
Classy.
setup. It's simple but efficient. Like we got everything we're going to be talking about on the screen in scenes 1 and 2. You got the rundown below us. Obviously, we're in the introductions phase right now. And then we're going to talk about some things we've been watching. We're going to run through The Wire, which is our, like, several, upwards. Like, I think the cap on the actual graphic is like 9 topics, but who knows how long that's going to go. But that part's like a quick hitter, back and forth. Not going to spend a lot of time on any one specific topic. Move on to our one big topic, which is, in this case, the DC Fandome, which happened this prior weekend, because we're doing this recording as of August 25th. Fusion's rocking the Flash. Oh, man, I should have worn my Superman shirt. Yep. But mine's in really bad shape.
Missed opportunity, my friend.
Well, I have the Flash behind me. The poster's right above my head.
Yeah, you know what? I eyed that the other day when you said a screenshot of your background. I was like, oh man, that's the first season, isn't it?
That was the promo image that they teased with, like, oh, we're fucking doing this, people.
Oh my gosh.
Because like they had the crossover in season 2 of Arrow where he wasn't the Flash yet, and they did the whole lightning strike him and everything, and then this is the image that came out the next week of, like, see you in the fall. Here we go.
Oh.
And like I really want to get Gustin to sign that someday, because that would be it's just a solid ass poster. The lightning bolt down the street with all the cool DC Easter eggs that the Arrowverse peppered in. Fantastic. And speaking of the Arrowverse, we'll get into that a little bit,
of course,
in The Wire, because there's some tangential news. It's weird and interesting. So, speaking of, let's move on to our next topic and go to what are we watching? So I'm going to take it to Fusion's cam here. Fusion, What are you up to in the entertainment space right now? What are you watching, listening to, playing?
Well, I think it's kind of obvious. I caught a couple weeks ago the series finale of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And if you've ever chatted with us, you will know, like, Thomas and I will, like, pimp out Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to people, because while it didn't have a great CGI budget, there was some really good storytelling throughout most of the seasons. There were a couple of, ebbs and flows, but overall, solid storytelling. And so I watched that, which got me started on, watching the first season. But I've been kind of slow at that. The other thing is I got into Lovecraft Country. I watched that on Sunday.
Yes.
The first 2 episodes, you know what? I honestly, Wartburg, I have never read the book, so I was like flying blind on this one. But I can tell you, like, okay, it's a sci-fi. Okay, obviously sci-fi, but it's a really good period piece, and it really hits you in an area that, like, a lot of, because I'm in my 40s. I grew up, a kid in the 80s, where I saw some of this on the tail end of it, socially, and I can tell you, like, you hear stories about how the 60s were, with segregation, the 50s and 60s, and like this really hits you right in the feels. Like every single, like, major scene, every 10-15 minutes, there's like a major moment that you just, man, this is such a bummer. It's even tied into the major plot in the first couple of episodes, and I really enjoyed it. The first 2 episodes, so that's going to be a weekly watch for me, because HBO is one of the few that still does it, just like Hulu. The major shows, they post them every week. The other thing is I've been rereading. I do this maybe like twice a year, where I really sit down and reread Why the Last Man, my favorite comic book. As much as I like superheroes, this is probably my favorite comic book, just because it's a really good narrative on just social structure, and basically the premise, if you don't know, guys, it's about a guy named Yorick, and he is him and his pet monkey Ampersand are the only 2 male animals in the entire world that are left after some cataclysmic event that just wipes out all the males, even those in utero. So it's just a world trying to pick up of women, figuring out how to move on. But then it's also about him and his struggle to come to grips with he's the only guy left. you know. And it's just a 6-year journey that's a really good story. I read that twice a year, so that's really where I'm at right now, honestly, man. And I'll pick up every now and then some of the old comics because I did a presentation for my office the other day, and man, um, some of my favorite stories, 90s X-Men, really probably peak X-Men right there from
Oh
about
yeah.
1991 to about 90, I'm going to say 98, 99, mid 99, some of the best X-Men stories ever. And then right around 2000s when the movie came out, and it just, everything went to shit at that point because everything had to match the comics. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Grant Morrison, I mean, I get the whole new X-Men storyline was good stuff. Wasn't a fan of the artwork, but I will tell you, you could tell that they started really to match the comics with the movies, and we've been playing catch up for the last 20 years with that stuff. Every
Yeah.
now and then they'll have a really good storyline, or they'll get on good pace, but then when a movie comes out, DC or Marvel related, and then all of a sudden you find the studios pushing the comic label to really get in line so they can sell them. That's really
Mm-hmm.
what happens, honestly. So,
I will say, I think
yeah.
DC's better about that though,
They
because
are
like,
better about that.
yeah,
Yes.
and the characters that they bring in from the movies are generally more well integrated.
Yeah.
Like in the case of like their golden child now, Harley Quinn. I mean, she was from
Yeah.
TV, and
Yep.
they brought her into comics, and she was an instant hit. Or to go back to the Arrowverse, John Diggle is now in the in the comics lore as part of the Green Arrow backstory, which is really cool because John Diggle as a character in Arrow is awesome, and I really hope he continues to pop up. Logistically, I don't know if it's possible in the future for him as an actor, but I hope David Renzi comes back because man, everyone needs more John Diggle. He's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone loved him, and of course the Arrow finale really
Yeah,
opens
exactly.
up a wait a minute now.
Yeah, like teasing that. Oh yeah, fuck it. We said he was Jon Stewart last year. We fucking meant it. Here's the ring finding him, crashing him, and sending him into a fucking van. I finally watched the finale of that. Here, I'll switch to my cam here because what I'm watching is I finally watched the Arrow season finale or series finale. Yesterday actually, I was just in a binge of just like I watched a bunch of finales back to back to back. I needed that emotional closure in my life
Sure.
right now. Like I watched Legend of Korra back half of season 4. Oh my god, what a stunningly well animated show that show was.
Yes, it was.
Had some issues with the plot sometimes, but man, that shit was gorgeous. Like I wish every cartoon could be that level quality of animation. I know it's expensive as hell, but it was damn good. Watched the Arrow season finale. I watched Lucifer's part 1 of season 5. Stupid guilty pleasure show that kind of scratches my supernatural itch because I'm still waiting for the final episodes of that run. 15 seasons, man. It's crazy. Like what that was what 2000 I think 2005?
2004.
Yeah, it's fall
yeah.
2004 I think cuz season 3 had the writer's strike cuz that was the
Yep.
one that got shortened. So that would have been spring 2007 I think cuz Chuck got caught up in that too back in the day. But other stuff I've been watching I literally had a list. Now I'm blanking on it. Obviously, I watched a ton of DC Fandome over the weekend, and that got me in. I'm waiting for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to hit Netflix because I fell off in that period where Hulu stopped carrying the 2 of the episodes I missed. So I don't want to miss them because I know they lay the groundwork for what Sousa has to bring into season 6, season 7, season 7. And so I don't want to miss that because I know where it pays off. I read ahead on reviews. I kind of spoil myself sometimes, but I still enjoy content even if I know it's coming. And to your point, I do want to watch Lovecraft Country as well. That's something that I definitely want to get into as a weekly basis, and I love that HBO continues to do like premiere weekly content.
Sure.
Especially now, like when there's nothing else coming around the bend or I shouldn't say nothing, but less new content, given the production woes so many shows went into. So,
yep.
I'm very much so looking forward to that. That and another DC connection. Jesse, how do you say her? Is it Smollett? How do you say her last name?
Smollett, yeah.
Yeah,
Smollett.
She's the Black Canary that was in Harley Quinn and the Harley Quinn movie, and she was awesome as Black Canary.
She's great. She's great in the first 2 episodes. I will tell you that. Yeah. She's great.
Awesome. I'll definitely check that out. So that's kind of where and I was playing the Arkham Knight. I replayed and finished Arkham Knight. I did 100% of the main campaign. Finished those fucking Riddler trophies. Oh my god. Oh my god. So aggravating. Even when you have guides, they're just incredibly aggravating sometimes because it's so fucking precise. It's crazy. And we have a little Arkham connection and a Wire, or maybe one of my Wire add-on stories in a second. So, speaking of let's move on to that, shall we?
Let's go.
So this here is our graphic for the WAFER wire. We're going to run through everything on this list, probably in pretty short order. So we'll start at the top of the list. Make sure I have my pages in order. This is just some easy red meat to start off, man. Friggin' Charles Dance, Tywin Lannister himself, is like, yeah, I kind of hated Season 8. Which doesn't really shock me, because most of the cast agreed with him. But it's always interesting to see a guy like him, who was one of their more celebrated actors before he became the character, you know? Like, Charles Dance has been in several of my favorite movies, let alone TV shows and in the, British circuit and stuff. So he was very, a known quantity, unlike a lot of the cast of Game of Thrones. Comes in, and I believe his direct quote was, I saw it. I continue to watch the whole series even after I've been killed off in the bathroom. Though he, of course, being British, uses lavatory, however you say it. Because I thought it's a fantastic television show, I was very lucky to be a part of it. I loved it. There were storylines where I wanted to know what was going to happen to these people. I know that the finale satisfied a lot of people. It also disappointed a lot of people. And I'm afraid I'm in the latter camp. And then he actually went even further on to say he would have actually signed that stupid as hell petition to remake Season 8. Which, of course, restokes that fire. Which is just super great. Not that was ever going to be a logistical possibility at all. But it's always interesting to see, like, cast members, like, break and be like, no, like, officially, this sucked. I didn't like it. So I just wanted to throw that out there and see if you had anything to add.
No, I mean, I wasn't as disappointed as most people were into that level. I realized that they had really run out of steam, how they were going to finish this off. I mean, they tied up a lot of loose ends the first couple of episodes, and I thought that was really good. Now, the last 3 seasons were off the books, so to speak. Season 5 and 6, I thought, even though they were off the books, were really good. I really enjoyed 5 and 6.
Yeah, 6 was fantastic.
And it was a matter of, there was so many loose ends that were tied up, leading to what direction we were going to go in. I really enjoyed that. Now, I mean, I have no problem with Dan saying that. That British snark always comes into play with these guys. Like, I think we talked about this. Alan Moore, he thinks everybody that loves every single work he ever did in the comic book realm, he thinks it's a piece of shit. Like, oh, that sucks. This is a guy that lives in a castle with a moat around it. So that's all you need to know about Alan Moore.
Exactly.
But Dance, he's always been a real nice, grounded guy in interviews. And I think in that HBO panel, to cap off the show, he was really nice. The whole cast, they were great. Obviously, they get along very well. But to see them all starting to pile on, it's really sad. We're not going to get a reboot. I mean, a reshoot, guys. That's not going to happen. The only thing you could have asked for was, instead of having something way back with the Targaryens, the next show actually be a spin-off of the Starks, maybe, like do a mini series on Arya, do a mini series
having her land in the dark land of is it a Shy or a Sai? It's like they're super weird, mystical, East Asia kind of vibes, where it's like ninjas and assassins and magic and shit. That'd have been cool as fuck.
Yep, that would have been really cool. Even if you learn about what happened to Jon Snow after that. What takes place north of the Wall going forward. There has to be the next big monster or the next big danger, and I'm sure it may not be the Whites, but it may be the White Walkers. It may be something else. We don't know. There's still there was still stories that could have been told. I just think that people were really sad about how it ended, and the petition's stupid. But I'm okay with Dance jumping on board. That's whatever.
Yeah.
A lot of people were disappointed, and I get it.
Yeah. So second story on the list here is one that actually got me very excited when I saw it on Twitter. I was like, oh shit, this is happening. So Olivia Wilde has been tapped to direct an as yet untitled female-centered Marvel movie at Sony, which basically means a Spider-Verse story of some variety. And there's really only 2 mainline female Spider characters, maybe 3, that come to mind as something that I think Olivia Wilde could tell a great story in, and that is Jessica Drew. That's her name, right? Yeah, the original Spider-Woman.
Yep.
There's another one, but she's not as interesting of a character. And then, obviously, Spider-Gwen, who's gone on to meteoric rise thanks to things like Spider-Verse, where she was a great character. And then also, they've been trying to get that Black Cat movie off the ground for forever. And also maybe Silver Sable, if they do it like a Silver Sable and Black Cat team up movie, that'd have to be a team up movie. Like it would, like they'd have to be connected. You can't. I don't think there's enough story between the two characters to do solo movies. They'd have to be together. The first two, though, a Spider-Gwen movie with Olivia Wilde directing it, that sounds amazing.
Yeah,
that sounds awesome. But if it's not Spider-Gwen Fusion, what, like, as someone who's not like super familiar with Spider-Woman, like, what else is on the table for the Spider-Verse in the comic realm?
Well, honestly, I mean, if it's going to be a female-centric role, there's not much left. Maybe I think you could talk about. I mean, if you really want to go off the cuff, there was an instance where Doc Ock was reincarnated as a woman. I mean, they're just. I mean, people want to be critical about the whitewashing of the Spider-Man universe and how it's evolved over the last 10, 15 years, and that's fine. But a lot of the characters, really, I really don't know, man. I haven't seen Olivia. She's only directed what, 1 or 2 movies at this point. She just got into directing a
It
couple
was
years ago.
Booksmart was the most recent, at least big one. There was a couple others too,
Okay.
but Booksmart obviously was like critically like one of the best movies of that entire year.
I haven't watched it. I need to sit down and watch it then.
But people that I follow and whose opinions I generally find myself agreeing with are like, shit, that was awesome.
Well, I mean, like Ryan Coogler was his Fruitvale Station was fantastic, you know.
And then he jumped.
The only thing right into Black Panther, and of course we've talked about this. Third act was total shit, but that had a lot to do with the studio pushing to get ready for Infinity War and Endgame. So whatever. I mean, it was a crappy third act, but overall really good scripting, great cast, all that stuff. I have a problem with the CGI and the fighting at the end, the battle at the end of that one, whatever. I don't know. Like, I'll sit down and watch Booksmart, and I'll give it a go. But honestly, if Sony were really smart, they would just go ahead and pull the trigger on Ghost Spider, on Spider-Gwen. That would really be the best thing, because if they cast the right person, and of course the last year and a half, it's been rumored that what's her name, Haley Steinfeld, she is rumored to be talking to Sony about a Spider-Verse movie or an MCU.
While also talking about maybe being Kate Bishop, which is like, I mean, I could see both.
Yeah.
As a young Kate Bishop, I could totally see her doing that. That's a character I'm more familiar with, but I could also see her as Spider-Gwen. And like, if they cast right, especially once they figure out, okay, what the fuck is a 10-year plan with Spider-Man, Sony, and Marvel? What's the plan? Once they have that, and they really need to iron that out, especially if they're going to cast another mainline Spider hero character.
Yeah.
A la, I mean, like, even more so than Venom, which is always, Hardy's off doing his own thing, so who fucking knows?
Sure.
But if you're going to cast a mainline hero that's the age of Tom Holland, there's going to be more and more pressure to make that a possibility for them to cross over. So you need to figure out the fucking plan of who's going to have rights to what movie, where it's going to be shown, what's in the MCU, what's not. It's cool, but going to open up a whole bunch of questions of what the fuck is going to happen.
Well, we talked about this, and I agree to an extent that they have to if they're going to tie it into the MCU to keep Holland a part of the MCU, they're going to have to tie in the Spider-Verse. This Spider, like the Venom and the Morbius, those characters, there's going to have to be a correlation, right? I mean, if you're going to put Tom Holland in, you can't have him be 2 separate Peter Parkers unless you're talking about 2 completely different, 2 different multiverse dimensions.
They could. If they just say, fuck it, let's go full Spider-Verse, break it, there's a multiverse, we're going to act like DC now, we can have 2 of everything, who gives a shit?
Well, DC, actually, it's funny you say that, because I was watching Twitter through the Fandome, and we'll get to this whole stuff later, but watching people talk about just this idea of parallel dimensions now because of the movies and the TV shows, and everybody's comfortable with it. I'm like, of course, because that's what DC did forever. I was a little upset when I was a kid that it was, different worlds and all that stuff, but people get it now. People that are like staunch fans of the movies and the TV shows get the idea of the multiverse. Okay, so then maybe Marvel can go ahead and implement it at this point and have a universe where Tom Holland is Spider-Man in both worlds, in the current MCU world, and then in this world where there's Morbius, the Sinister Six, Spider-Gwen, maybe even do a Miles Morales.
And clearly Adrian Toomes is in both then, because he was in the trailer for Morbius.
Obvious.
So, Clearly they're skirting that line of, is it multiverse, is it not? So they need to make a clear delineation. Like Logan did this. Logan was like, no, this is an alternate timeline. This is a possible
Yeah.
ending for the X-Men future. It's not the definitive end. It's a possible end and just a cool story. And it was critically maybe the best movie in the entire, I think the best movie in the entire X-Men run.
Yeah.
And it was definitely a Elseworld kind of story. Like, it was a
Yep.
what if, and it was amazing. So getting away from direct continuity is definitely not a bad thing, and that's actually helped DC. Is to get away from direct movie to movie continuity
Yeah.
has helped them, mostly because they didn't have a vision in the first place. But outside of Snyder's Ayn Rand like fucked up version of Superman, but that's a whole nother topic of conversation, which we'll maybe get into a little bit with the fandom stuff. So
But honestly, just to wrap it up real quick, I mean, it's. I mean, I don't know. I'll have to go watch her the Book Smart movie and see how how it laid out. But I really think if you're gonna go ahead and go for the big bucks, go straight to Spider Gwen because
mhm,
she's the hottest character. Jessica Drew. Old comic book fans know who she is.
yeah,
Even early 2000s with the new Avengers, there was resurgence of her character, but it's just she doesn't have staying power. Every time
no,
she comes in, there's a 10-year
yeah.
window, and she just burns out. The
She'd be
character
a
burns
better
out.
fit in the MCU, I think, as a Shield crossover because she was a Shield agent, right?
Yes, she was a Shield agent.
Yeah,
So yeah, that would be great to have her in
yeah.
she could have been in Agents of Shield, and you could have tied it
That would have
into
been
the
amazing.
MCU better.
Because they had
Yeah,
fucking Mockingbird, and then they were like, hey, you're going to get a spin off. Oh, sorry, you canceled, and we already wrote you out of the show. So, bye. Which really
yep,
sucked, because, man, she was awesome. Mockingbird and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for 2.5 seasons, it was perfect. For 3 seasons.
I agree.
It was.
No, 2.5, I think.
When did she show up? Yeah, it was
No,
season 2
you're
she
right.
showed up, and then she got
Yep,
written out during the Hyde story. So it was
yep,
end of,
you're
end
right.
of season 3.
Yeah.
So, right? Man, there was so many crazy shit things that happened in that show. I'm having a trouble remembering what all
So
happened.
wait, she debuted in season 2,
With as
uh,
undercover in Hydra.
in Hydra, and then season 3 was the Ghost Rider season,
That
wasn't
was
it?
4.
And that was 4.
So yeah,
Okay,
she was
so
gone by Ghost Rider, so it was 3. It was 3.
yeah, it was
Yeah,
3. So they were a year and a half, a season and a half run,
yeah, and she
or
and she was
2
awesome.
seasons.
Adrian Pilecki.
Pilecki, yeah,
Yeah, and she's fantastic. So I'd love to see her show up in other superhero stuff, but that's just me.
yeah.
So moving on, let's get into some quick box office news.
All
These will
right,
go
let's
back
do
to back
this.
stories. This is that Unhinged is the first movie like to really come out as a new movie in theaters since I want to since they decided at last minute we're going to pull Onward to be a digital only basically. Um, but it didn't exactly set the world on fire. It only made Onward at that time when it had like that limited theatrical run before they pulled it made about 10 million. So that's where the box office was at as everything was shutting down. The number here, Unhinged opened on 1,823 theaters, 1,823. Generally, a rollout's around 4,000. This is a story from AV Club, and it made 4 million in its opening weekend, basically. But while that's not a great number, it's 575% more than last week's like total gross,
Yeah.
like of every movie. Because the next movies on the list are the SpongeBob movie, which made 550,000. Then it's The Goonies, Cutthroat City, which I don't even know what that is, and Empire Strikes Back. Those are your top movies. Now that's the state of theater in America, basically, which is not great.
No, it's not. Um, Honestly, this is pandemic related. I don't really know how long this is going to go, but I will tell you this, what I'm interested to see in a couple months, we're going to see, hopefully Disney releases this stuff very early on. The initial dollar amounts of opening, quote unquote, opening day for Mulan and Black Widow on the Disney Plus.
Mm-hmm.
$30. I think $30 is a fine price tag. I know people want to contest it; it's too high, but I'm like, guys, when you go to the movies, you pay for the ticket, you get your
Mm-hmm.
meal. How much have you really spent at that point? You've
Yeah.
probably spent upwards of 20 something, maybe even $30. So, what you're doing is you're getting exclusive content. Well, I should have it longer than 24 hours. No, it's exclusive first run content of a budgeted film that it took them $200 million to make, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, let's be realistic about this. If if let's just say Black Widow, they paid 200 million was the budget, overall budget. Overall budget was probably closer to 250 to 300 million when you include marketing. Um, let's just say that opening day on Disney Plus, they score $35 million, in terms of
Yeah.
downloads. That's very eye-opening. And then you look within the first week, let's say they get close to 100 million. This may be a new avenue,
Yeah.
to really think about for the long term. It's something I've pushed for a long time, but honestly, we're gonna see these low numbers for a while, and unfortunately, some of these movies that are probably gonna be really good movies are gonna suffer because a lot of folks, including myself, quite honestly, I have no intention of going to a theater anytime soon, just because when I'm in a theater in the wintertime as a germaphobe now, and at my old age, the wintertime becomes a little nervous when I'm sitting in a theater and I hear people coughing all around me, and
Hmm.
that's pre-pandemic.
Yeah, that's like
So
regular old everyone's got a flu vaccine world, not this world.
exactly. I'm like, I've got a flu shot at me, but this guy next down the road from me could be rocking a new strain that we have no idea about. And so it's like, okay, I usually don't watch as many movies in the wintertime, except for like if it's a major movie like a Star Wars for Christmas, that's I gotta be there for that. But I think this is gonna really shift long term, man. It's gonna really shift long term in terms of like, a lot of theaters will shut down because of COVID, but I'm interested to see what happens with the online exclusive movie runs in the
Same
next
here.
couple of months. Yeah.
And in other news, before I circle back to your point about the online downloads, Tenet, another top blockbuster movie, Christopher Nolan's latest,
Yep.
uh, had its limited run in South Korea, and they're facing a huge like shutdown again because they.
Yep.
And here's the thing, which is not to get political, their increase was like an average day out here in Iowa. They're shutting the whole fucking country down again. Like, and again, there's a much smaller country, logistically far easier to
Sure.
do. I totally understand that. Just a case of contrasts to look at. But it was like the weekend that they opened their limited run was right when they had their other wave come in, so that it went down 73% in total revenue for their South Korea box office, which is only one of the only like box offices open outside of America right now, because
Yeah.
worldwide it's all shut down.
Yep.
And it only made about 717,000 on 590 screens, which were, and their theaters over there are, you're not fucking around. You are social distance. You are wearing a mask. There are no concessions. Like it is, I don't know about the concessions point, but the last two is specifically in this article from Deadline about the limited capacity social distance theaters that other places are trying to mandate here in the States, but I hardly expect that to happen, which is why I'm not going until probably next spring for a movie, which sucks
Yep.
because I drive an hour one way to get to a good theater. I fucking love going to the movies, man. Like, I love it. And it just sucks that I don't get to do that for,
Yeah.
at this point, probably another 10 months, which really sucks.
I
But,
think we're gonna see this get really bad.
like,
It's bad now. It's gonna get worse.
like we just went off a cliff. I mean, this is to get into governance, not politics. We just went off a huge fucking cliff last month with the run out of the unemployment benefits, which is what was keeping everything afloat. That's gone now. Rent moratorium's gone. The economy's things are gonna look extremely different by November without a major change on the congressional side in this country.
Yeah.
So strap in, because it's gonna get.
Yeah.
As a guy who studied government and history in school, this is gonna get historic levels of weird.
Well, I think you talked about it. We've actually talked about this sidebar. Not only are we going to see, because we're watching content that's been in the pipeline for the last 12 to 18 months.
Yeah.
At some point, because we're at month 6 now of this quarantine, at some point that pipeline starts to thin out because a lot of productions have shut down. I mean, granted, there are a few productions that have opened back up,
Yeah.
slowly, and great. If they can do it safely, that's great. But what I mean is that we're used to just absorbing all this content, whether it be music, games, movies, TV shows, and a lot of shows have been put on hiatus. A lot of movies have been postponed in terms of production. Like Stranger Things, a huge show that was going to have a massive season 4. They only got into, I think, 2 episodes when they had to shut down. And so we're going to wait another 10 months, like you said, to get it. Okay,
Yeah.
well, this is going to be brutal, because at some point in the next 8-9 months, we're going to start running out of content, and
Yeah.
everybody's gonna have to get used to reruns, man. Quite honestly,
Yeah.
we're gonna be talking about, at some point, probably early next year, we're gonna be talking about shows that, hey, if you've never watched this, you should give it a
Oh yeah.
try.
Like I don't doubt that'll be a topic we discuss. Mostly
Well,
because
I'm just saying,
yeah,
that
like
Kroll,
for sure.
that Kroll podcast, get ready, because we may get to that point, man. Just saying.
It like eventually we're gonna run into that wall, and we're
Yeah.
getting close already. Like with movies that are like they haven't even announced an official date for Black Widow, right? I think they're waiting on the numbers for
they're
for
waiting on
Mulan,
they're gonna wait
which
on
makes
Mulan, but I
sense.
know it's in November. I
Yeah,
think
they gave it a November window, but I'm thinking they might push it first week of December, just to get it away from Thanksgiving a little bit. But
sure.
it's, who knows? Especially Thanksgiving would be a great time because everybody's home.
Yep.
But because to get back to that
everybody's
point,
everybody's at home now.
Oh no, I mean like everybody, like if in a normal world doing that,
Yeah.
November works great.
Yeah.
Because like you can get it's like a holiday movie thing, right? Like, but you do it via streaming.
Yeah.
Make a push that way. But obviously everyone's at home now. I'm not. I need to get my brain into thinking that because I live in Iowa where our governor has a lower she's got a lower approval rating than fucking Mediacom, which is not good because Mediacom is garbage. Like, they are one of the worst cable companies in the country. She's got a worse approval rating than that, which should tell you a lot. But I work at a bank, so mine is like a very essential service to a community. So like, they really need to stay open. Otherwise, like, everything shuts off in a community if the bank's down. Like, it happened to a town near me. 2 employees ended up coming down with COVID, and they shut the bank down for like 3 days. Everybody lost their mind. Like, I gotta drive 45 miles to go get to a bank now. Just like, yeah, that's what happens if you don't take it fucking seriously.
Yeah.
It's
well, man, I really hope that, maybe in the next 2 or 3 months we start seeing things get better. I don't want there to be a rush to opening up theaters just for the cash grab, because that's the worst thing that could happen is putting 100 people into a room at a time,
for 2+
and a lot.
hours.
Yeah, for 2+ hours, you're talking about. I can just see the danger in that. But I get where people are starting to get worried in this industry. But
Oh yeah.
man, honestly, these studios have made billions over the last 30, 40 years on a lot of these blockbusters. If they're running on just if they're just put together on with nickels and duct tape, they're stretching it movie to movie. There's a bigger problem we have to look at.
Like,
but
this is gonna break and force systems across the country to be remade, like college football. Like, everybody's running on fumes because it was a constant arms race of who's going to do it bigger, better, faster, quicker, and spend more money to make it like do the most, right? Like, whether it's coaches' salaries, buildings, whatever. And in movies, it's who's got the biggest VFX budget, or who's getting paid, paying their stars the most, or who's like, there's so much money being put into the marketing programs and all these things.
Yep.
It's going to force a reckoning of a lot of the way studios operate. And I don't know what the future is going to look like, because, like, I mean, Hollywood's going to look vastly different post-COVID than it did pre, with everything just running so close to the wire and deadlines. And, maybe this turns our TV into more like Britain, where it's 6 episodes, but they're all an hour and a half long and awesome, Like, I'd be down for that. It'd be cheaper and cool. But speaking of, like, because there's like so much content, like there's just so fucking much. This is going to shrink that a lot, because like, to get to a point that I have further down the list, what was the last month? What was the #1 cable drama? Got a guess? Or rather, this whole year up to this point.
This whole year?
I think it was this year. Let me look at the story again. But take your guess. This is a Deadline story.
Man, I'm drawing a blank here, man.
It was last week. Sorry, last week. The season 3 finale aired of this show drew 5.2 million viewers during the air window, like same day and live window. 5.2 million. Do you have any guess?
Grey's Anatomy. I have no fucking clue.
Ever watched anything on the Paramount Network?
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it was Yellowstone, starring Kevin fucking Costner, which I've never seen an episode of.
I'm told it's a good show, but just wow, that was the top-rated show.
Yeah, and really? So that's emblematic of this whole. Everything is so fragmented, and everyone is trying to pump all this money out all the time, and constantly in this churn, that when the wheel stops, it all falls apart. And to get that restarted, so many of these smaller networks are not going to have the cash to do that again. They're not going to have the cash to restart that wheel. It's going to take a decade plus to get that to anywhere close to we have right now. Because everyone who would invest in that kind of thing would be scared shitless it happens again in 5 years. And they're just out all that money. Like, unless you have the money now, during quarantine, I don't know how you make it to make the shows on like a Yellowstone level. Obviously, that one's going to be fine, because it's, even if Paramount Network has to shutter, that show would get picked up somewhere. But all these networks that just propped up over the last few years.
Yeah.
I don't see how they stick around, man.
It's going to be kind of tough, especially as the average consumer spends less on these things because of what their economic situation is. You know, the box office is going to continue to suffer, like I said, but then, you know, the law of diminishing return, man. I mean, people are going to say, well, why should I have to pay for YouTube TV? Why should I have to pay for Netflix, Hulu? I get Prime Video with my Prime subscription, Disney Plus, the Peacock paid service, HBO Max. It's like, why do I remember we've talked about this, and you know, maybe do a dedicated podcast to the whole streaming wars at some point. But man, it's gonna be really weird how content where it's gonna be siphoned in the next 6 7 months,
It's
honestly.
gonna
And
be
what yeah,
bizarre, like,
yeah,
because I mean, I came of age like in like the tech, you know, like the big tech boom, the streaming boom, and all these things where like I was getting into pop culture because I didn't really grow. I mean, I grew up with 3 channels on a fucking small town farm in Iowa, so I had the
yeah.
'90s X-Men stuff, like that kind of Fox Kids and WB Kids shows, and that was all I had for pop culture for a long time, outside of whatever movies my dad had. And now like the world that I was in for like the 12 years of my adulthood, because I'm 30 now, gonna be so vastly different in my 30s that it's kind of blowing my mind a little bit, because it's
Yeah.
gonna be fucking weird.
Yeah, it is. It'll be weird. It'll be very weird. Yeah.
So I think we hit the nail on the head on that one. So real quick, just give me a 1 sentence reaction to this sentence. On the CW, Greg Berlanti is going to be the head of the Arrowverse, you know, the progenitor of all those actually really good shows, like just top to bottom. They've
Okay.
been pretty solid.
Yep.
He's going to be rebooting the Powder Puff Girls on the CW, and they're going to be mid-20s, having now grown up and become disillusioned with the fact that they basically lost their childhood or never had a childhood because they were created to be superheroes.
I just pooped a little and not in a good way. Oh Lord.
I was hoping for a reaction like that.
Oh dude. Okay, look. The CW, Riverdale, really good show.
Again, that was
I'm
Berlanti that was like,
yeah.
fuck it, let's do that. And
But I
it
mean,
worked.
you take a darker modern edge to it. Okay, it worked. It really, really did work because I saw the characters, and as goofy as Archie, and obviously his dye job is horrible for Archie, but I liked the way that they created character depth. You know, they built this world around them. Uh, I liked the show. I mean, I'm not a huge follower. My wife really loved the show, so you know, I would sit
Yeah,
down
of
with her
course
and
it was
watch it on
on.
occasion.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this idea of it, and you know, three and you know, embittered Powerpuff Girls, you know, in their 20s,
Yeah.
dude. Seriously, like, okay, look, real talk here. You put this motherfucker on HBO Max. One of them is hooked on meth. The other one's, you know, she's the other one likes whippets for breakfast, and one of them has the other one has an OnlyFans. I mean, it has an OnlyFans fans that is like not doing very well, and she's you know really upset about that, and she's got self-image problems. Now, that show of a Powder Puff Girl trio in their 20s, that can work, but that's not going to work on the CW. That's not going to work on the
Yeah.
CW. But you know, maybe on a show where there's no real rating, just like a Daredevil, you know, they can get away with stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, this
Because
is
to
not
me, it
good.
reminded me of that. You remember that Power Rangers like dark reboot thing that came out a few years ago,
Oh yeah,
where
who
it
was
was
in
like
that?
that was R-rated shit.
James Vanderbeek was in
Yeah,
that,
he was the Red
and yeah,
Ranger and like
yeah,
all that, and that's from the same guy that did that Punisher fan film with Thomas Jane. It's
yeah.
not. I'm gonna butcher. I'm not even gonna try the guy's name. It's in my brain. I can see the YouTube channel in his name, and I'm just blanking on it. But those were two really like interesting like things, and this is kind of what it feels like for that. To do it right, you'd have to take it that far.
Yeah.
Like that theme doesn't lend itself to PG-13 CW.
No.
That said, Greg Berlanti's got a heck of a knack for making good TV. Maybe not all-time quality, but good, consistent, and runs for forever TV. Like,
Sure.
for what the CW is going for, maybe they see something that they can do, because obviously he can tell superhero stories well. We know that. I mean, the Arrowverse is chock full of... They did fucking Crisis on Infinite Earths and did it well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's got a little of my faith here on this one because of that success. But we'll see what that... We'll have to see what it looks like. What's the trailers look like? What's their marketing strategy before I decide, okay, I'm going to watch this, because But, you know, and who knows, because Vancouver they're back in production. Like Supernatural's like
Yeah.
filming their final episodes, and because they're in Canada, so they can, as long as they have more stringent protocols on like quarantining and stuff. So they're back in function in the CW land outside of Black Lightning because they're in Atlanta.
Yep.
So that's going to be, and maybe, I don't know, I don't even know what they're going to do with Black Lightning now that I think about it. Like, that's got to be a 2021 show now.
More than likely.
Got to imagine that. But
and that sucks because Crisis, they
they
tied him
really,
into the
yeah,
world.
they brought him
And
into
you were like,
Earth One, and you're
okay,
like,
you're like, all right, he's going to be a part of the Arrowverse. It's going to be great. And then, you know, the only show that films in Atlanta. And he's
Yeah.
like, I'm sure everyone, the cast and crew are like,
yeah,
damn
like,
it.
damn. I really wish they had decided to move. I get why not, because like having Freeland be this, and Freeland is, I don't think the name of the city in the comics. Like, this is a new creation for the show, but it's very different from the rest of the Arrowverse, and I love how it looks. I love the feel. Cress Williams is awesome as Black Lightning. He's got that kind of just like, fuck it, I'm the best charm when he's Black Lightning, and you're like, that man's Black Lightning, and it's awesome. But
well, when they first casted him, I'm like, okay, is he going to be playing like a 20-something? Because he's in his late 40s.
yeah.
But then they're like, oh, no, he's a guy that's in his late 40s. That's was Black Lightning that kind of just semi-retired. And
that character's had a huge growth, too, because he was one of the main characters in Young Justice Season 3, which was a mainline DC Universe show. And again, same iteration. Got two kids a little younger. They were kids in that cartoon. But like clearly that same iteration where he's having marriage issues, got kids, trying to be a superhero, you know, part of the superhero community and doesn't always get along with everybody. Like, I like that kind of character in a superhero world. And Chris Williams is fantastic in that.
Yeah, he is. He's great. I don't know, man. I really can't buy this. Like you said, you've got to go balls to the wall with this one. Like you got to go all out. These girls are a total train wreck, because if you go semi there and they're self-aware, I think the act will wear thin very. People will. They'll the first couple episodes, people will watch it. There'll be 10 million people, but afterward, people will just lose interest very fast.
I just don't see it becoming a long-running thing, and maybe that's the point. Like, maybe they just need a short one-season run of a show, and pull a Watchmen, do a one-season run, so that way the rest of the CW lineup can catch up and get back into production, and then do it. Like, I could see. I think more shows should lean into that. I'm just like, no, we want to tell one story, and that's it. We're done. Plus, it keeps your cast from sticking around fucking Vancouver for 10 years, or 15 in the case of Supernatural, from two really good actors from doing other things. Like, so that's going to be one to watch, because I like Greg Berlanti, and he's in a panel I want to talk about the DC Fandome. But so I'm just curious. That I think it's time to. And speaking of the DC Fandome, I think we mostly touched on everything. Like, the rest of the stuff is like basic COVID cancellations. But
I do want to say. I don't want to bring this up real quick. Are we getting a third thing?
Yeah, there is. This one is happening. A Thing reboot is coming down the pipe. Where's my story? Did I unlink that?
To be fair, the second Thing wasn't a reboot. That was a prequel of the original.
Yeah, we're going to get a Thing, like, basically a reboot of the 81 one, it sounds like, so far. Yeah. From what I read, I think I must have X'd out of the story. But this one is going to, basically, they're going to pull a Terminator and bring in the original, director. It was Carpenter,
John
right?
Carpenter.
Yeah.
John Carpenter.
They're bringing Carpenter back to, like, help shepherd it. Not direct it, but to be a producer of, like, and here shepherd the story. So, like, and be on hand for the writers to be like, hey, what's the, what are we going for here? How to kind of try to shape it, a la like a Christopher Nolan and Man of Steel, stuff like that. So that one, while it's a cult status, The Thing, I would, and it's Blumhouse. That's who it's doing it with. It's Blumhouse Productions. Okay. So it's going to be on the cheaper side. But on the flip side, their cheaper horrors have been awesome. Yeah. Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day 2. That shit was hilarious. It was basically Palm Springs but horror, and I loved it. It was very meta, and very, like, also an effective horror movie.
Sure.
It was just this weird thing, kind of like Tucker and Dale a little bit in the meta horror aspect, but then also doing a Groundhog Day thing, and also maybe a science thing in the second one. So it's like super fucking weird. And Jessica Roth as the main characters, fantastic. So Blumhouse, they make good shit. So I mean, it's cheap. It's not like super extremely well produced because it's shoestring budget kind of content, but as we talked about earlier, maybe that's what is, what is going to kind of re-kickstart everything is the cheaper content right out of the gate.
Sure.
Because that's faster to produce. As you said, the pipeline is going to be extremely constricted at the start of when everything opens back up, going full tilt. Those shows take a long time to pump out. Those movies take a longer time to pump out. But middle of the road, cheaper horror movie, that's not that hard to turn around really in the grand scheme of things compared to like a Marvel movie,
Yeah.
So that'll be one to watch too.
So you're right. And now that I think about it, a good little pipeline of just low budget horror and indie movies that they film them in 8 weeks, and it takes them another 8 weeks for post production, and they can boom 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 have
I'm
it
trying
out.
to think what that one was. One of those they made for like $5 million, and it turned around like 110. Like it made bank, and I can't remember which movie it was. But Blumhouse is built for that kind of thing where they'll just give a creative team a small amount of money, decent cast, market the heck out of it, and they're good at marketing their stuff. And watching it explode at the box office or streaming services, depending on what the future holds. So, I think that does it for the WAFER Wire.
Okay.
Let's move on to our one big topic, and that is the DC Fandome. So we're going back to the main here.
Quick disclaimer, I am a Marvel guy by nature, but I do love a plethora of the DC characters. Yeah.
And I'm a DC guy that loves and that enjoys Marvel. So we're opposites there.
I just I am a Marvel honk. I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been excellent as a body, overall, including the television productions. But there's a lot of disappointment with DC, but a lot of that it's not about DC Comics, guys. It's about Warner freaking Brothers and their stranglehold as a company on the production of their products, and it's very annoying. But anyway, but yeah, I know DC fandom enjoyed it. Watched it the whole day, had it on in the background. What are your thoughts on it?
I thought it was... I can't remember if this was the plan for pre-COVID, or if this is something they threw together last minute. Not really last minute, but in the grand scheme of things, usually events like this would have been planned months to 18 months, or a year to 18 months out, probably. So some of this was in the works for a while. Yeah. And it was just a really cool kind of mashup between like a Comic-Con and like a video game conference and a bunch of these other things, but specifically focused on DC, which is now 80-some plus years old, I think. Isn't it 80, 81 with Superman?
81 or 83, 81, 82, somewhere around there.
It's in the low 80s, because Catwoman's 80, so it's got to be older than 80. Same with Wonder Woman. She's 80 this year, too, so it's got to be older than 80. But it was just a really cool celebration of everything DC. I mean, they went deep with DC. Like, they had a whole half an hour panel, maybe even 45 minutes on the fucking multiverse. Like, with Jim Lee, Greg Berlanti, and I'm blanking on his name, but the president of the films division. Yeah, with a guest host who she used to do the DC Daily. That's no longer a thing anymore. But that was, we talked about the multiverse a little bit ago, that panel, stuff like that, like, just unabashedly, DC fucking rules. Like, a whole 12-hour stream for that was an incredibly cool concept. I can only imagine would have been cooler if they could actually get everybody on the same set. Yeah, to make those video interstitials work better. Because, I mean, they tried. They went pretty hard on some of those sets. Like, everybody was on a green screen, like, they weren't messing around. They tried to make it look and feel as natural as possible. And it got damn close. Closer than I think anybody's done outside of, like, a Sony. Sony's E3 press conference was, like, top tier. But they only had, like, a few dozen people, not 12 hours of interviews and content and panels. Because, like, they had, like, panel sessions and they had interviews with developers and, and just showing trailers. And, like, it was, like, a hardcore celebration of DC. And for me, it made me very happy.
I'm sure it did, man. What did you like most about it?
I mean, for me, what struck me most, like, as a fan of DC was that multiverse panel. Because I had just missed the Wonder Woman trailer. I was going to get lunch and got stuck on the line at the pizza place, so I ended up missing the Wonder Woman trailer. And Wonder Woman's not ever really been my, like, favorite character. I like Wonder Woman, but I'm a Superman guy at heart. And then the multiverse panel was pretty early in the day, and just listening to them talk about, like, how the Ezra Miller cameo in Crisis on Infinite Earths came about, like, the fact that was literally the day they were editing it, like, Final Cut edits. And Jim Lee calls and is like, hey, you want Ezra Miller to be in this thing? He said he's in, and I guess the suit fits. Are you
Yeah,
in?
they were like, we had to make sure he didn't get too fat for the suit.
Right? Like, and then like that, and then they said like how that like opened their eyes to the fact that yeah, audiences they eat this shit up. Like
Yeah,
they understand it. Like they get that that's Barry Allen, that's Barry Allen, but they're different Barry Allens, and that meeting is incredibly cool. Like the fact that that's even possible from a show that early in Arrow's run wouldn't let him have Bruce Wayne, killed off Deadshot, killed off like, and wouldn't let him have Harley, and like wouldn't let him have all these cool characters that they were. Man, season 3 was building to some cool shit, and then they just chopped it off at the knees, which really sucks. I know season 3 Arrow gets a bad rap, but man, they had a whole suicide arc that just got shot right, like shotgunned them in half. Like they couldn't do it anymore, and it really sucked. Because it took them a while for them to get back on their feet, because you can tell they were planning to do a lot of Suicide Squad stuff with how like they built sets for it, and then they cut it off. Ah, that sucked so much. But
well, I mean, I agree. I mean, I thought the multiverse panel was really fun because we talked about this earlier. It established this whole thing that we know now the non DC fanatic can keep pace now because we have the multiverse in season 2 of Flash, and then we've established that all of these movies and films and TV productions the last 50 years, yes, they're all active in our multiverse. All of them are, the 1960s Batman, the 1980s Superman, the 89 Batman, like everything fits in, and then
yeah,
that Flash meeting was a perfect way of tying the movies and all of the different movies and each universe that's together or not together and the TV shows and just saying, okay, everything is bridged because of the multiverse.
yeah,
That's it.
and I mean, these are the heads of like basically the guys running the shows on the media side,
Yeah,
like making the content basically. Obviously, they're not making all the decisions when it comes, to
sure.
who has access to what and all that. They're not the only power brokers in the room, but
Yep,
that gave me a lot more faith in the future of DC on a live action side. Obviously, their
sure.
animated stuff is still fantastic.
Of course.
DC Universe, for all its flaws, is still the best way to get DC Comics. Marvel Unlimited is $2 more a month, and they don't have videos. Like that's just Marvel Comics, and it's more expensive.
Sure.
Like so, DC Universe as a whole is also great. I don't think they should have been pushing the original content. It should have just been comics
Yep.
and or older shows, because it's a great value for that. And like having them, and especially what's happened with Warner Brothers kind of reshuffling their executive like board and stuff, and like
Sure.
who's running HBO Max now. They've said, "Fuck it, HBO, it's your show again." Kind of like a mea culpa, our bad, And then these guys having this panel, and like listening to them talking, going, "Man, I think we might be getting some really dope DC shit down the line, and I'm 100% here for it. Let's go." It got me excited about DC Comics in a way that really hasn't in a while, outside of
Sure.
like a Crisis, like specifically the Arrowverse, and
Sure.
like Wonder Woman, the first movie, and Aquaman and Shazam. Like that's really it on the live action side. And Doom Patrol is great. Don't get me wrong. I actually really like that show. Same with Harley Quinn, fantastic. Like they have a lot of cool content like in the pipeline that's currently active, and it just feels like maybe they finally got their head out of their ass just a little bit, and I'm excited to see what comes next for DC. Obviously, we got the Snyderverse cut coming, which of course he fucking used Hallelujah as his trailer track.
Yeah, it
Of
was great.
fucking course he did, but it got me that whole 12 hours plus that in that panel specifically. God, that got me excited about DC Comics, and I don't know if this becomes a yearly thing, because I don't know if they'll have the content for it yearly. But I hope we get it every 2 years or something. Like, because I mean, speaking of things COVID's going to break, like, I don't know if Comic-Con ever becomes a thing as big as it was.
Yeah, it
Like,
should be really hard
I
to-
don't see, especially next year too, because even by next year, 2021, vaccine ain't going to be that widely spread. Hall H
No.
is not going to be a thing. Like,
No.
I can't imagine it will, especially in the
I mean,
state
do
of
you really
California.
think July of 2021 we're going to see 250,000 people in downtown
No,
San Diego again?
not in California. Hell no.
No, I don't. After how we've seen how horrible they've responded to this whole thing,
Yeah.
I don't see, unless we're gonna have a Comic-Con West, East, and South where
Yeah,
they're
like
much more chopped down to like 15, 20,000 people. Maybe.
Yeah, like so this might be the future of how these bigger companies, these big tentpole companies that have so many irons in the fire,
Yeah.
kind of have a almost like a summit of like, hey, here's all the cool shit we're doing. Here's what we want to talk about. Here's what gets us excited. Like the just like the cast panels they did, like having Achievement Hunter Fiona leading the Wonder Woman cast in a game of werewolves. Like
Yeah.
that was hilarious.
And props
Like
to Fiona on that, man, because she really didn't feel like it didn't really look like she was overwhelmed by seeing
no,
Gal Gadot, Chris
yeah,
Pine, Robin Wright, all of these like amazing actors like right there in front of her.
yeah,
She's leading the panel. Like she did a
yeah.
great job.
And
Yeah.
everybody that was involved seemed like, oh, I want to be here. We're doing some
Yeah.
cool shit. Here we go.
Yeah.
Like it was hype from beginning to end. And while I had some quibbles with like how things were done sometimes on the tech side, I totally understand the limitations they're under. Like even the little I know tech stuff, making a show like this, I completely understand. The between the rock and a hard place they're in some of these decisions.
Sure.
But like, and for me, some of the other big highlights, non-trailer ones, the Shazam 2, Fury of the Gods.
The gods. Yeah.
That is a very interesting title because are they finally realizing we need to rebuild the gods part of the universe? That'd be cool as hell.
Yeah.
Because that's something, one of the few quibbles I have with Wonder Woman and the state of the DC universe, DCEU. They killed the gods? Like, that's such a huge part of her story. Like,
Yeah.
they can't be dead. I mean, it's easy enough to hand wave. You just go, oh, that children's story I read you as a kid. All bullshit. They're all hanging out in Olympus or Tartarus or whatever. Like, it's easy enough to hand wave, but I hope they actually do it. Because there's some really cool shit there. Like, New 52 Wonder Woman is all about the gods and, like, Wonder Woman's relation to them. And it's also maybe the greatest Wonder Woman story since, I don't even know whenever. Like, it's one of her seminal stories, the New 52 Brian Azzarello run.
Yep.
It's all where she becomes the god of war. Like, awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Like, with the whole, like, she takes off the gauntlets and is like, oh, they don't defend me from you. They defend you from me. And then she goes full Thor in Ragnarok. Awesome. Now, to be fair, they did get criticized for her copying Thor now, if they did that kind of scene. But fuck it. It was rad as hell in the comics, man. Go to town. Like, they need to build up that part of the universe, and using Shazam to do that would be really interesting. And Sinbad might be in it.
That was really random.
But also, how meta, like, the whole, like, Shazam thing. Like, so bizarre. Like, I hope that wasn't just a meta, but I hope he's got some random cameo or something. Like, fuck it, make him Zeus. Like,
that would be kind of interesting, yeah.
Like, who knows? Like, make him something. Maybe he's like Hephaestus or something, and he makes all the armor and shit.
Yeah.
Maybe he's that weird god who just, like, never left. That'd be cool. Or, some random shit like that. And speaking of Shazam, of course, we got The Rock doing his level best to hype up concept art, basically.
Yep.
Which, again, that story sounds rad. That story sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Like starting, he's a slave, becomes a superpower, gets corrupted, gets arrested, or gets exiled, comes back and fights the Justice Society. That's cool. That's fucking awesome. Let's go. I want to see Hawkman. Is she Hawkgirl or Hawkwoman? I think it's Hawkgirl.
Hawkgirl, Hawkman.
She's been either, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, they said, and Dr. Fate's gonna be in it. Just like,
yep.
Oh, so we're bringing some magic shit into this.
And Red Tornado. We're getting Red Tornado.
Right? Like, Red Tornado's a great character. Obviously, bringing in a magical character in a big movie like this, like, that's explicitly, like, a magic user, not just someone empowered by magic like Shazam. Like, that he weaves spells and stuff like that. Maybe that leaves a little room for a Justice League Dark. Little John Constantine. Fuck it. Speaking of the multiverse, Matt Ryan coming up to be John Constantine in the movies.
Why not?
I'd be a happy man because he's been now the same character in movies, in the animated movies and TV, and I think it may be a video game. And let him show up in the movies. That'd be cool. I'd be game for that.
Yeah, let him run their live action. Let him at least run a cameo in Justice League Dark or something.
Heck yes, heck yes. But what do you got on your list?
Okay, well, trailers aside, I loved the Shazam panel. Really loved it. I did love the multiverse just because, from a branding standpoint, I've made jokes over the years that Warner Brothers has really done their best to just ruin their product. In spite, because like with Wonder Woman, that movie was a great movie, great movie, and it caught everyone off guard. And I don't know if you remember, but like 3 or 4 years before that, there was a Warner Brothers conference call where they basically just said, "Yeah, we're never a woman will never lead a superhero movie."
Yeah,
No, let me correct that. A woman will never lead a successful superhero movie, and
yeah,
that was like 3 or 4 years before. And then a year or two later, Patty Jenkins gets announced, and then Gal Gadot gets cast, and everyone's like, "Yeah, but she's kind of skinny." And then they take the first image comes out of her in the outfit. Everyone's like, "Okay."
yeah,
When Dawn of Justice came out, everyone's like, "Okay, like I
yeah,
like this.
yeah,
She's got that presence. That's okay. She has the film presence, which is what you need." And then the movie was great, of course. And I think going into the 80s, because I'm a big 80s honk, I love the fact that it's 1984, because 84 was a great year for me in terms of like content as a little kid. But I think I really enjoyed I really enjoyed the multiverse panel, and it just showed that guys like Jim Lee are just like, hey man, we know the comic book geeks, like the diehards, know the multiverse. That's part of, just if you love DC, you understand it. But I think they also were like, hey, we've got the average moviegoer and TV watcher understanding it now, so we can really do whatever we want, because we could isolate new shows, and that they not have to be tied into one specific universe. And that's where, like, Kevin Feige, I get it, like he didn't really want the TV shows to be tied into the MCU, but they did at the beginning, and then they kind of walked away from them because he wanted to isolate the movies because of the value of the movies versus the TV shows, whatever. But I really think DC is like, well, fuck it, we don't care. Everything coexists in a multiverse.
yeah,
Everything you take in is existent. It just may not be in the same universe as this one over here. And Marvel could have really explained that. They may do that with the Multiverse of Madness in a couple
exactly.
years.
Yeah,
And if they do that, honestly, if they do that, Warburg, that gives them an opportunity to really work on their relationship with Sony
hmm,
for the Spider-Man stuff. Especially if they expand the Multiverse of Madness, because then the third Spider-Man movie, because I mean, the next movie, well, the fourth Spider-Man movie, he's getting more than three. The third one needs
yeah.
to be a Craven thing. It has to be a Craven movie, man. Has to
Of
be a Craven
course,
movie.
like that.
Uh,
Yeah, that's being. And I think the rumor is he may be getting like Craven may be getting a movie. They haven't said if it's going to be Craven the Hunter or like if they're going to do some other weird interpretation where it's like Craven like something else. But
yeah,
like it's got to be Craven because like he's on the run, he's being hunted,
yeah,
and I'm
yeah,
secretly hoping for a little Charlie Cox cameo. If definitely, maybe not Daredevil, definitely as Matt Murdock as like Tony's go-to lawyer for superhero
yeah,
stuff. Who of
yeah,
course John Favreau would know. We're like, hey, Tony
yeah,
said I always should call this guy if things ever got bad with him, like in the government, and he gives him a
yep,
card. He
yep.
reads it, Matt Murdock. That'd be awesome. And then he
Well,
shows
given
up.
well, given that Matt Murdock and the Defenders defended Jessica Jones, so he has
Exactly.
experience representing powers.
Yeah.
But don't want to go too much into Marvel, but I mean, that can lead the whole thing. I really like how DC's handled that. I'm
Hmm.
hoping, hearing the story about Ezra Miller and on the Flash and Crisis, really got me to understand that that was a moment that Jim Lee took the lead, and he did not have the Warner Brothers studio
Yeah.
on his back about this stuff, because they were shooting, and he's like, hey, let's just see if we can do it, last
Yeah.
minute. Grant, Ezra, you want to do it? Sure. Can you fit in the costume? I think so. All right, can you do it in a day or two?
Can you
I
catch a
Yeah,
red eye
let's
to Vancouver like
yeah,
tomorrow?
yeah, let's
Like,
okay, yeah, sure. And they just boom, 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 got it done. And honestly, if it had been something they had approached Warner Brothers about, I can imagine it being something that they're like, no, we want the movie to
yeah,
be different from the TV shows and all this stuff. So,
they would have had to been
but
pitching that months in advance, not
yeah,
while they're editing the final episode.
yeah.
Like,
From a creative standpoint, establishing that all of these shows they all exist in the same realm of existence, but on different layers of dimensions. I think that takes a lot of pressure off of the creative crew.
yeah,
Um, Not having to, appeal fanboys to say, well, it's not, is it what universe? Because now we've established from Crisis that, hey, boom, 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 we have
yeah,
all these universes. And that panel was really good to hear them talk about the future of their creative material, both comics and other media, going forward. And I really, like, I've given DC a lot of shit over the years. It's not DC Comics. I've given a lot of shit to Warner Brothers, and the whole 5G thing really angered me earlier this year.
yeah.
This
That
whole
was
5G
so
campaign.
just
But I liked that. Of course, I found myself liking the Batman. trailer, the
Oh,
teaser,
that's what I
and
want to end on, is that
we could we
trailer.
could we could end on that.
Yes.
We'll talk about that. The games, Gotham Knights, very excited for that.
Yes, that looks super
we're getting
fun.
we're getting a Batman game without Batman. Okay, sign me up. I will say biggest disappointment for me is Rocksteady and the Suicide Squad kills the Justice League. I have a feeling that game is going to bomb. When I watched the trailer, there was no gameplay, just the
Well, it is
cinematics.
also, it is 2022.
Yeah,
That's what
that's
they
true.
said.
Now, what they did say, the post Q&A was, this is going to be a shooter, where in terms of all of the characters just shoot everything. That's going to run very thin very fast for people.
Hmm.
That's if your primary attack for each character is just guns. Boomerang is not he's not a gun guy. King Shark wasn't a gun guy in the comics, and you're making this a shooting game. I really think people are going to get tired of it fast. I really
Yeah.
do. I think it's. I know Rocksteady, they did a great job with the Arkham series. I have concern with Suicide Squad kills the Justice League. I really do. I do.
It'll be an interesting one because obviously they have some grace period to retinker stuff because, like they said, we're not even giving you a month. This is just 2022, and I could see them pushing it too, but because they were starting probably retooling development because from what it sounded like in the back end, this was supposed to be a Superman game.
Yep.
Then they kind of wound it down, and then they wound back up development to be a totally different type of game, but also feature Superman. So, and it is a continuation of the Arkhamverse. They've come out
Sure.
and said that creatively.
Yeah.
Like, yes, this picks up after Arkham, because clearly Harley Quinn is a different character than she was in the first Arkham games.
Yeah.
She was very much the 90s Paul Dini Harley Quinn in those
Sure.
games. And it looks like they're transitioning her into the more modern DCEU, DCAU type of Harley Quinn, which I actually think is a better character anyway.
Yeah.
Her as an anti-hero, kind of this crazy wild card, way better character than the, Harley, like Dr. Harleen Quinzel,
Yeah.
with Joker all the time. Way better
Sure.
character. And like the cast, the characters that you're going to get to play as, outside of Captain Boomerang, who I've never been a huge fan of, but he was pretty awesome in Arrow. Those like 3 episodes we got him. Like Deadshot, very interesting character to get to play as a character like that, and like clearly, I could kind of see where they're going with the story. Like you got to kill the Justice League. They're going to be like, "Now fuck you, Waller. We're going to go free the Justice League from mind control, and you can fucking deal with it." Like that's going to be the story, and I'm along for the ride for that because like I like that kind of story, and I'm curious to see what gameplay looks like on that because obviously Rocksteady knows how to make a great game.
Is this the first game that Brainiac is in a DC
Injustice 2
video
was
game?
Injustice 2 was the main bad was Brainiac, him coming
Okay,
to
well,
Earth.
I'm not talking about fighter games. I'm talking about
Yeah,
story
but
mode
that
games.
story was awesome. That story.
I know
That
it
story.
was a good story.
Injustice and Injustice 2 plus the prequel comic that's kind of bridges them. Holy shit! What a great alternate world that was it Tom King or Tom Taylor? I think it was Tom Taylor that wrote that story. Holy shit, was that good? So many great panels, like the whole Harley Quinn talking to Arrow. Why don't you call your cave the Quiver? It's like shit, and he just kind of like has that moment where he's like, "Fuck." It's like great shit like that he just weaved into that just extremely fucked up DC universe. But
yeah.
I'm curious to see what Rocksteady does because I mean the Arkham series, the Arkham trilogy specifically that they did, that's like the deepest Batman world we've ever seen outside of Batman the Animated Series. Like it is deep. So that's going to be interesting. Gotham Knights obviously looks fun.
Yeah,
it looks like a beat 'em up shooter with like the Avengers but better mechanics basically.
Yep.
Because I watched some streams of Marvel's The Avengers, like the Square Enix one or Crystal Dynamics. Maybe it's both. Doesn't look like a fun game for me. It just looks like Anthem meets superheroes. Just like it just looks clunky. Whereas this game, it was in gameplay, but obviously it was pre-recorded stuff. It wasn't live gameplay. It looked smooth. Like voice cast was cool. Seeing Barbara Gordon as Batgirl, but a Batgirl, they said in the backstory, had been Oracle. Like this is her spines put back together kind of Batgirl. I'm game for that. Like I love that iteration of the character. I was hoping Gotham Knights would be the continuation of Arkhamverse. I think just the setting fits it better than the Suicide Squad game being a continuation does. But it being, different studios, I totally understand. Because Rocksteady, I believe, still has that IP license.
Yep.
I don't know the actual logistics of their contract with WB for the DC license, but obviously they've kept it if it's a continuation. Like, that's in their court. And
Obviously.
as great as those 3 games were, I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
those 3 games were fantastic. So, but yeah, I'm
Yeah.
very curious about Gotham Knights because that's a 2-player co-op. I don't think Suicide Squad will be. I can't
No.
imagine Rocksteady making a multiplayer shooter. Well, no, they said it was multiplayer, didn't they? What
I
was
don't
the
remember
statement?
seeing that. I don't remember seeing anything about it. Honestly, man, just watching the cinematics, something told just gave me a really bad vibe about the game.
Yeah,
Like,
I can see that. I'm curious to see what it's going to look like next summer when they should have some gameplay to show, as
Yeah.
opposed to a cinematic. I'm curious, like, what's the pacing going to be like? Are we switching characters every level? Are we
Sure.
switching at will? Like, what are we doing? Like, what are you doing, like a GTA style campaign where you can play as any of them outside of specific story missions where you have to play, as those characters, which that was a great way to run a campaign.
Yep.
So maybe it'd be something a la that. That'd be pretty interesting. And obviously Gotham Knights is setting up the Court of Owls, which I'll get into a little bit when what I think they're going with the Batman, the movie.
Sure.
Because I have a theory that I rewatched that trailer a bunch over the weekend. And let's move on to the Batman, because we've been...
Let's do this.
Yeah, this will be the last topic of the day. So the Batman trailer. What were your thoughts?
I was okay when Robert Pattinson was cast as the Batman. I was a little wary just because I'm not a Twilight guy, or whatever. I'm not a big fan. I don't know. I've seen maybe 1 or 2 of his other films. Didn't really think like he blew me away in terms of screen presence. So to see this idea of a more visceral Batman in this trailer actually was pleasantly surprising. To really see that this is not year 1 Batman, which every time there's a reboot that can happen, we always talk about year 1. This isn't year 1. This is year 2, which is an interesting take on it. That the city of Gotham knows the Batman. He obviously is working with the police at this point, based off of the teaser trailer. But there, it's kind of like Spider-Man: Homecoming. You have a foundation. It's guys. We don't need to retell the damn story again. The origin. You know who Spider-Man is. You know about Uncle Ben. You know about the spider bite. You know about all this stuff. All right, let's just get to the good stuff. This is the same thing with him. Like, he's still learning. He's still young at it. He's going to make some mistakes, and based off of the Q&A, he's going to accidentally maybe kill a few people here and there too. Which, okay, all right. Well,
I mean, yeah,
I mean, I'm not
in Batman comics canon. He definitely gets people killed and/or kills them on purpose.
Yep, exactly.
Like, that's not exactly foreign to the Batman. It's
Yeah,
foreign in
this
the
whole
movies.
thing. In the movies, it is, and in the comics, it was an evolution of he was a detective, but he actually was more vigilante than detective in the old comics, and kind of in the 70s and 80s, he really transitioned into because of the comics code, the whole thing. And not
Exactly. Yeah.
But anyway, so I liked it. I thought the Batmobile is a little weird. The suit, I really don't have a lot, just because it looks a little baggier, and I can get why, because it's supposed to be about combat function.
Yeah, like he can
like
like Pattinson can actually move and fight
yeah.
in that costume.
Yeah, and that was the problem I had with the Nolan stories, was you could tell that Christian Bale was very limited in his movement, very stiff. I mean, obviously, the guy can't turn his neck in that cowl, because it's a plastic cowl. But it looks a little more realistic. That's why I liked the Affleck suit, just because of course it's the Frank Miller style suit, but that cloth, that fabric, he can move around and really throw himself around, which is what I liked about some of the stuff about that the Singer Batman. But the Nolan suit just really angered me to no end. So I don't have a problem with that. Of course, everyone's talking about the Riddler, and you will talk about the topic about how the puzzle was solved pretty quick. But I liked it, man. I think just that little bit of info is probably like a quarter of the way they've shot the film at this point.
Yeah, they said they had all the action scenes mostly done, because obviously that comes first. When everyone's in peak health, everyone's got high energy, nobody's worn down from 9 weeks of shooting. Like, you do those first. Those are done, which is why the trailer was, as solid as it was, because it wasn't just like dialogue. It was some serious action scenes, like the grappling hook. And I guarantee that Penguin stuff is all intro. Like, that's the prologue, is him taking down Colin Farrell's Penguin.
Yep.
Like, to set up that, he's the Batman. And some of the gangsters are scared of him, some are not. The world is still trying to figure him out. And then he takes down the Penguin, and then he gets called in for the Riddler story. And that's where we pick up with the Riddler stuff.
Sure.
Which I'm down for, because I can't believe they've cast him as the Penguin. Like, he doesn't even, like, he's wearing that many prosthetics on his face.
Sure.
But I'm down to see him get taken down by this Batman, because that Batmobile looks like something on a fucking Thunderdome. Like, it looks so weird. Like,
Yeah.
I think I was talking with Chris about this. They said the movie's set in, like, their version of the 90s.
Yep.
Like,
yeah.
So clearly this is an alternate world. Like, they're not even trying to say we're Nolan, real world.
No.
This is, fuck it, they're 90s, but, like, he's got flat screens and stuff in the Batcave, and, like, he's got this car that can be made in the 90s. No way that could be made in our 90s. No way in hell, right? Like, so it's very clearly like they're trying to marry a lot of different interesting concepts of the Batman mythos, like, kind of like the 90s, like they're doing, like, animated series. Like, it's its own universe, it's its own style. Like, you don't have to worry about the bounds of reality, lending a little more suspension of disbelief than Nolan could get away with how closely he tied it to reality.
Sure.
He did it extremely well. That semi-flip in Dark Knight, Jesus, what a masterpiece of cinema that was. Holy shit. But this movie's obviously going to be a little more fantastical. The Riddler, taking him seriously as, like, a comic book serial killer, like, not making him a joke, I think is very interesting, because in mass media, you know, things like, I was talking about the Arkham series, he's basically a joke. Like, he's played for laughs. Or, obviously, was Batman Forever? Batman Forever was him, right?
Yep.
Played for jokes, right? Like, which was weird, because Jim Carrey can do seriously scary very well, and they played him for laughs, but, and then, like, other iterations, like in animated stuff, again, played for jokes. Like, when we actually took him seriously?
Well, you know, I don't know if did you ever read Batman Hush?
Yes, and
Okay.
I've seen the animated adaptation. Very solid. How they changed that was way better than the book.
Okay, what I thought about the book was the true mastermind. Just spoiler alert, guys, if you haven't read it yet in 20 years, the Riddler was behind everything the whole time, because he got diagnosed with cancer and he had to go through a Lazarus pit, and he came out really fucking bitter. Like, he's just like, I've been around just as long as the Joker has and everyone else, and no one takes me serious. And that's what I really liked about that final couple of pages of Hush, where, you know, Batman comes to him and says, "I knew it was you. I figured it out. It was you the whole time." And he was really mad. You know, it's like, this was the ultimate riddle. Like, who was the mastermind behind it? And you didn't. You know, at the very beginning of the comic, it's a petty a petty robbery that he arrests him for. But that was just the Riddler fucking with Batman to kick off this whole Hush campaign. And so, you know, I really like this idea of maybe the Riddler is a much more dangerous character, and, like, you want to tie it into the Owls, go for it. But I really think I like this idea of making him a much more dangerous like a serial killer type. I like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And speaking of the connection there, I mean, I also want to touch on using Nirvana as your backing track for your opening teaser trailer.
Yeah.
Solid fucking move. That was a great version of that, great kind of remix of that song with a little heavier bass. God, that was good. Yep. Plus, also, set in the 90s band. I like it. But setting up the Owls, and it's the bit at the end where he's talking to Bruce. Riddler's talking to Bruce.
Yep.
You're a part of this too, and he's clearly killing, like they said in some of the press releases, the serial killer is killing high-profile, well-connected individuals. Sure. And is constantly pointing out that they're lying, that there's a deeper story to be had. He's trying to expose the Court of Owls as the Riddler. And then Batman's going to get on his case because he thinks he's just killing people, right? Like, you know? So he's got to stop him. So he goes to stop him and finds out, oh shit, he's right. Like, this is real. Oh shit. And then setting up the Court of Owls in their kind of Matt Reeves kind of AU, because, like, they're clearly telling this as a contained universe.
Sure.
But I would love to see this Pattinson's Batman show up in other versions of films. But they're clearly keeping the Reeves movies their own thing. And he said he's got plans for several.
Sure.
Definitely, I can't imagine he's not setting up the Court of Owls. Because if you set up Court of Owls from the beginning of your story, it never really clicked that great in the comics, because, I mean, it came 80 years into his run as this new villain, right? Like, new villains are harder and harder to make work. But the New 52 Court of Owls arc, I mean, you have Scott Snyder?
Yep.
And Greg Capullo doing the art. You couldn't ask for a better Batman team there. And they really sold it. Like, and it's permeated through multiple things. Like, Gotham Knights is doing Court of Owls. Court of Owls was in Young Justice. Court of Owls was in all these different books across the DC Comics line. And it's clearly now part of the DC lore. Maybe it wasn't the best villain they've ever introduced, but in the comics, that's, like I said, hard to do with a character as old as Batman.
Yep.
But you start your universe with that. You start your new Matt Reeves Batman, setting up the Court of Owls as an undercurrent throughout everything. That's fucking dope. I want to see where they go with that.
Well, it could be compared to Nolan's League of Assassins.
Yeah.
That's how you could compare it to the same thing, because a lot of people, a lot of the average moviegoer had no idea much about the League, about
Yeah.
Ra's al Ghul, and I thought that was great to have that whole League be a backdrop in all three of those movies to an extent.
Yeah, like a cool just running undercurrent of a different part of the Batman universe than most people see. That most people know of the Riddler. Maybe they aren't super into Batman's villains, because obviously everybody knows the Joker.
Sure.
A lot of people would know Mr. like Penguin or Mr. Freeze, because they were, and same with the Riddler and Two-Face, because like they were those Tim Burton movies, right? Whereas the Court is a newer thing that if you're taking this like not really darker's not the right word for this Batman. It doesn't look like super
Visceral.
fucked up. Visceral's a
visceral.
good word, because like a lot of people have been like, oh, it looks like Daredevil but on DC, and I'm like, like Daredevil wasn't dark, but it was heavy. Like it was it just impacted you when you were watching what happened on screen. Like,
well, hell, I had to check my nose to make sure my nose wasn't bleeding after every episode, because I felt like I was getting punched, man.
Yeah,
Seriously.
like it was like, especially like season 3, like it was emotionally draining.
Oh god,
but there was nothing like super, like aside from in season 1 where the guy like impales his face to not reveal Fisk's name. Like that was one of the most fucked up things in the show, really. And as far as TV and movies nowadays, that's not that crazy.
No.
But it was still just, like you said, visceral, heavy. It was just fascinating to watch. This feels like they've got that tone. Like they found what that tone is and how to put it with the Batman story. So they have my attention. Definitely with this one. Because that trailer, I have watched it at least a dozen times. It was awesome. That was a great trailer. Especially for a movie that's not done. Like for a movie that's not going to be done for a while because of COVID. That was a great teaser trailer to drop as your last panel for a 12-hour show. What a way to cap off your show.
When Matt Reeves said, "Oh yeah, we've only filmed 25% of the movie," I was like, "Well, that was actually a good trailer out of only a quarter of the film." I mean, seriously, like it gave away enough, but not too much of the plot. You have an idea of who the key players are, but it also keeps a few things as a mystery to you. The visceral part, loved it. Like I said, Robert Pattinson still has to win me over as Bruce. The Batman thing's easy. It's just have a dark presence, speak with a very gravelly voice, and we can go from there. Obviously, that one fight scene where he fights that thug in the rain.
Man.
Okay, that was a very different, because that wasn't very comic booky. What I mean by that is, it's a lot like you said, like Daredevil. The fighting in Daredevil, and we've talked about this, and I tell everybody this: the fighting in Daredevil, bar none, is my favorite fighting of any comic book series, movie, or film to this point, because like you feel it hurt. Like when he gets hit in the ribs, you could freaking feel that pain just because of the sound effects that they use. And so that's the same kind of thing I got with that little scene where he's beating up that guy. It was very raw and just gritty. And I know, Nolan's Batman was a real Batman, but there was a lot about it I didn't like in terms of like the costume and some of the other things. But this like from this point, Matt Reeves, I'm not saying I'm won over, but I'm saying I'm very interested now, guys. Very interested.
Like if they got that tone, but with like to get back to that scene, there was 2 cuts. One to the guys watching, and then one back to Batman to deliver the "I'm vengeance" line. Like the whole 9 punches he lands on the dude, no cut. Like Matt Reeves is a fantastic director. Like he has directed some amazing sci-fi movies, a couple of decent action movies, sci-fi action movies if you want to call them, the Apes movies. The last 2, holy shit, man. Those are some of the best movies of the century so far. Yeah. Bar none. Yeah. They're amazing. Give him a visceral Daredevil-esque Batman early in his career with a serial killer story. Oh, I am very intrigued. So I'm curious. I'm very much going to be staying on this one as they get back to filming, and trailer 2. I'm hoping we see more, because like you said, you got to be winning him over as Bruce. I can't imagine they filmed many Bruce Wayne scenes.
No, not yet.
Because those come later. in the, it's obviously movies are so mishmash of what gets filmed where, it's not in sequential order. Action comes first, character stuff later. A lot of that character stuff is not done. So, and and they just like to touch on the cast very briefly. Jeffrey Wright, Commissioner Gordon, freaking Zoe Kravitz is Catwoman.
Yep.
Holy shit! This universe is just really cool.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. I mean, yeah, I have confidence now. I was very, very cautious, and not even cautiously optimistic, just cautious. I've bumped myself up to that cautiously optimistic part now.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna write that down. When they drop trailer, like official trailer 1 or whatever they call it, I'm gonna get a temperature check on you for this movie. This will be our barometer. Like, where's Fusion at? Okay.
Yeah, where am I at? We're getting there. We made one step up. Hopefully let's go another step.
It was a strong step. Like, it was a good first way to get going.
Yeah.
So, speaking of first steps, this has been our first episode of a pilot episode. Maybe we do another one. Maybe we just decide to roll out number 1. Who knows? We'll see what happens. Of course, I'll do some editing tonight, pop it into Premiere and see how things sound. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on from the news stories or the DC Fandome itself?
No, that's really. I mean, Wonder Woman 84. It still looks like it's going to be a good film. The Flash panel talking about season 7.
Yeah, like that they confirmed it's Flashpoint, and like they're bringing Affleck back and Keaton's Batman probably as Bruce Wayne, not Thomas Wayne, which means maybe they are going to bring Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Thomas Wayne in. Who the fuck knows?
Yeah,
I
think just like the TV show, you have the Flash anchoring the entire Arrowverse in terms of all the multiverse.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have Ezra Miller's Flash on the film side that's tying in all of these universes, because I'm sure in that Flash movie we're going to get a Michael Keaton. We probably might even get a Gene Hackman cameo as Lex Luthor, just for the hell of it,
So, like,
I mean,
they could
any of it's possible.
They could go deeper than Crisis could on TV, because obviously they have more money and more cachet to get people that were in their older movies to come back and do stuff like that's going to be really fascinating. That was going to be...
No, hold up. No, we can't say that, because the cameo of Bruce Ward as Dick Grayson.
That was a deep
cut. That was
deep.
That was 1960s cut. So
I'm talking like maybe they don't tell anyone, but Christian Bale was on set and was Batman. Like,
okay,
like
that would be
like it's basically Batverse, but with Flash as your main character, and then of course this is going to be Affleck's last ride. He's going to make the sacrifice to save Barry, and he's not going to come back. Barry's going to restart the universe, and it's a new Batman, which I'm game for. Maybe they just say, fuck it, Pattinson, you want to be 2 Batman? Like,
sure.
Fuck it, maybe we don't want to recast it. We'll just do you can do both. That's your 2 movies a year. You do a DCEU supporting character movie, and then you get your main movie in the Reeves universe. I'd be game for that. But
okay.
Not to get down even further down the rabbit hole of DC, because man, we could go forever with the rabbit hole of these DC comics. DC is just
3 or 4 hours easy.
Patchwork of crazy town bullshit that's also fun. But that's, like I said, been our show for this pilot episode. So if this comes out anywhere on YouTube, I just want to say it'll probably be on my YouTube channel just for ease of use, for uploading on my end. So drop a like for sure, subscribe, comment, the usual shenanigans. And we'll see you next time, because coming out down the road, we've got Mulan coming out digital September 4th. Speaking of digital, we also have The Boys Season 2. Did you ever watch Season 1 yet?
Yes. Actually, I capped it off this past weekend. So,
quick thoughts, like 30 seconds or less.
Funny as hell. A little darker than I expected it to be at times. Very dark at times.
Oh, yeah.
Leaves you wanting that season 2. So yeah.
Right? Like, they had that just hook that I tried to read the book, didn't have it. The book for me just never hooked me. Garth, I don't mind Garth. It's Garth. Did you say Enos?
Garth Ennis.
Ennis. I can never remember how to say his last name, but his writing for me leaves something to be desired. It's kind of a little too beating you over the head with the hammer sometimes. But man, that adaptation was great. And I cannot wait for season 2. The reviews for season 2 are so far like, oh, it actually got better. But like,
oh boy, okay.
Oh shit, here we go.
Real.
I'm very excited. Also coming down the pipe, one thing I'm going to be watching, just because I'm a huge Henry Cavill got cast as fucking Sherlock Holmes in a Netflix series. I didn't know this until literally right before we started the episode. It's that Millie Bobby Brown Enola Holmes, where it's like,
oh, is that the one?
He's Sherlock Holmes. He's her older brother.
No shit. Okay.
And everyone's losing their mind because he's full hair, like he's grew the curls out and everything, and he's got a curl that comes down, and everyone was like, Superman, give us this. Like Henry Cavill is one of those guys that I'm gonna watch fucking anything he is in. So that's on my watch list, at least an episode, because Henry Cavill, he's fucking awesome. I want more Superman with him. I want it more than anything in DC is Henry Cavill to get a good Superman movie, because it would be, short of having Brandon Routh to come back to do a Kingdom Come movie, that would be the Superman bucket list for me. Is give Henry Cavill a good movie. Show people Superman can be good. But that's our show. I'm MrWartburg. That's Mr. Fusion. We'll see you in the future. Bye.
Bye, everybody.